This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Well, good day, everybody. Just wanted to say thank you and welcome to everybody to joining us for the Stratodesk Tech Talk number 3 with Patrick Coble again on the line. Patrick, welcome. And just for everybody's information, this is being recorded. And as you'll find out, Patrick and I tend to do this pretty casually, and we like to be interactive. So if anybody has any questions or anything along the way, please feel free to interject. With that, again, I'm Rich Severson, the VP of Global Solutions Engineering at Stratodesk, and on the call with us today we have Patrick. Patrick, go ahead and make your introduction.
Yep. So I'm Patrick Coble. I'm the VDI hacker. I'm a security nerd that's also a Citrix CTP and a VMware EUC V expert, and have been doing this Citrix EUC kind of VDI Windows thing since '97. So I've seen a lot of stuff come and go, and we don't have floppy disk anymore, so that's cool, I guess.
Yeah, I'm glad that we don't have floppy disks anymore either. I've had my share of bad stories with those going around over the time. So anyway, so let's jump into this. Patrick and I, we talked a little bit, and we thought we'd throw out some subjects today that we find rather interesting, and certainly a couple that are very pertinent to what's going on. So one of the first things that we wanted to talk about was the chip shortage and how that's impacting the industry. It's quite amazed me. We're seeing where organizations, whether they be manufacturers, whether they be customers in the end user computing space, whether it be partners, business partners, I guess, if you will, or certainly, obviously the hardware vendors, all are having different challenges regarding chip technology and getting chips. And it's quite amazing. Just a quick story, and I'll let Patrick provide some feedback. We're actually doing some business with a company in Australia, and they've reported that their ability to get hardware into Australia has become an amazingly difficult task, which is absolutely, from a Stratodesk perspective, it's absolutely wonderful in the aspect that they're now pulling out machines that they thought were dead machines, if you will, that had no life left in them, and find by putting Stratodesk OS on them, they can rejuvenate those machines, bring them back to life, have the latest and greatest, end user computing solutions, whether it be the VMware client or the Citrix client, or, introducing the WVD client to the legacy hardware. And it's been quite an amazing journey for those guys, I guess. So, Patrick, what are your thoughts, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, same thing. Like last year when the COVID craziness kind of got kicked off, there was a lot of people trying to expand their deployments and just buy computers. And it was just a supply chain that no one could ship out Chromebooks or endpoints fast enough. And now we're in like the opposite, where it's not just they don't physically exist. No, everything physically exists. It's just missing the chip, just like the thousands of Ford pickup trucks that are sitting in a big field near the factory. It's kind of blowing my mind because it's something that's never happened in the IT industry like this for this long. We've always been crazy nerds and wanted to buy the latest nerdy thing, and we would dry up the supply because we bought so much. In this situation, there's so much demand and there is no supply for these specific components. So some of these manufacturers have the computers all ready to go, just ready to slap those last chips in there, and they just can't get the chips. I thought it was the Suez Canal with the thing parked and blocking it for a while that was part of this, but it continues on. So it's a kind of a very mysterious thing, like lumber prices.
Well, yeah, the lumber prices. I was listening to somebody talk this morning saying the sheet of plywood has gone from $18 to $80, and it just amazes me how this is impacting the entire global supply chain throughout. One of the things that we're seeing trending, I guess, if you will, from a support perspective, is we're seeing more and more customers that are coming up with new hardware, and of course, the big thing is all about getting storage and the NVMe drives, and I'm curious to see, how we're going to see, I won't pick any vendor, so I'll say, let's say PC model 100, in January had NVMe drive version 1 in it, and they can't get those drives anymore. So here we are, we're only 5-6 months later, and now those same machines have got another new NVMe drive in them because they're just basically throwing in there what they can get.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah,
going to be interesting.
Yep, for sure.
So then the next thing, I wanted to talk a little bit about the advantages of Linux, and this is going to come out. And actually, I should have gone and updated this, right? Uh, certainly security is always an interesting aspect, and that's one of the advantages of the Stratodesk is the fact that the way that we developed the Stratodesk No Touch OS, being secure from the ground up and those kinds of things. But it's certainly been impacted, or the business has been impacted over the last couple of weeks with these the ransomware attacks, Colonial Pipeline, and getting updates out to these machines in Florida Water. And the Florida Water one kind of snuck under the radar for a lot of people. And of course, the big one this week has been the whole JBS meat manufacturing thing. Um, and Patrick, I'm going to come to you in just a minute about this Florida Water thing, because I'd forgotten about it. And when you and I were talking the other day, you brought this up. And I think this is one that, like I said, kind of slipped under the radar. But this just goes to point out how important having a secure operating system and being able to manage, maintain, and update your endpoint devices and your entire infrastructure becomes critically important. In fact, we had a customer, and in this case, it's a government, so I can't say who, but I mean, we had a customer a week and a half ago that got hit by ransomware, and it took down their entire metropolitan facility. And the nice thing was is they saw Stratodesk, they called us and asked if we could help, and they were able to migrate their entire IT infrastructure from on-premise to the cloud, taking advantage of the fact that we just put No Touch Center in the Azure Marketplace. So they were basically able to move their entire IT infrastructure from on-prem to WVD. In fact, thankfully for us, we got the purchase order today from them. So literally, they moved their entire IT infrastructure in 8 days. And one of the things that they said was the beneficial or the advantage of that is by going with Stratodesk and having all of our services being able to be delivered from the cloud in combination with WVD and No Touch Center, and then being able to manage the endpoints, made it so easy and so quick for them. So with that, Patrick, your thoughts and feedback.
Yeah, no, I mean, the security world is kind of upside down right now with so many attacks, so many ransoms paid. And that Florida Water is a wild one because that one, a lot of the attacks we see, even Colonial Pipeline, most likely, right? I'm doing air quotes right now if you could see me, but so many of these attacks are just basically dragnet phishing, right? We're sending out millions of phishing emails all the time. Sometimes it's not completely targeted to one specific company. It's just targeted to anybody that'll click a thing. So then when it becomes targeted to a company, and you get that, phishing is like kind of the number one way that most things get executed. But to that point, Florida Water was TeamViewer, right? So we as EUC people, we have said, hey, oh yeah, we can administer that from anywhere. Okay, that's cool. Well, then that also means that most likely, depending on how you set it up, especially if there's no multi-factor authentication, anyone can administer it. And so that hack was, someone was familiar with that system for sure, because they were going to crank up the sodium hydroxide levels, which is also called lye or caustic soda, from 100 parts per million to 11,000 parts per million. And the only reason it got caught was because someone saw the mouse moving, right? And then they're saying in their briefing was that someone wouldn't have been able to do that for very long, because downstream in the water pipeline system, it would have said, hey, this is over 100 parts per million, what's going on, and it would have set alarms off. But the thing is it would have happened, right? There would have been that much lye dumped into there. And so that just goes to show that these systems are there. And, so far, both of these hacks are centered around Windows. And it's because it's such a popular operating system, just like even Mac now has more ransomware packages that work along with other malware that's starting to get created for it because it's becoming more popular. So Linux, even being like one of the oldest operating systems out there, there's less malware and things written to it. And especially when we talk about like Stratodesk, we have a purpose-built operating system that doesn't have a lot of extra fluff or other things, right? It doesn't have GNOME and XCE and multiple display managers and all that have to get patched all the time. So, and the more people that keep paying the ransoms, the worse it's going to be for everybody in IT, honestly.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, the advantage of the Stratodesk OS is that it's, locked down. It doesn't have all the fluff services and things that they normally just include in the OS to make it easy for end users, right? I mean, this is about having a secure operating system that can be managed and, deliver to the users what they need to have. But I mean, that the Florida water thing is somewhat frightening because, to your point, yeah, it may have been caught down the line, but how many people would that have impacted before it got noticed or brought to light? So it's pretty frightening, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
And to
And
your
then
point,
that's one of those changes that's also scary in the sense that they said that it could have taken around 24 hours from the water being changed to the water being actually changed at the end of your pipe. So if someone did this for just a couple hours and then got back out, you wouldn't know for 24 hours before someone took that next sip of water. So kind of very scary things when we talk about like utility things. And then, I mean, the meat packing stuff. I mean, I love eating dead animals, so that's near and dear to my heart.
I know I'm afraid to see, first, Patrick and I both live in the area where we got impacted by the Colonial Pipeline thing, and certainly, this is the time of year where we don't want our hamburgers being impacted or the price of our hamburgers going up, right? So,
Yep.
anyways, so, which, so to be able to have the secure operating system though, it's important, but then how do you manage those things? And again, adding on to the one we did a couple of weeks ago, I'm pretty proud of this, and this is, one of the things, having the ability to put things like No Touch Center, the endpoint management for Stratodesk OS, to be able to put that and make that as a cloud offering, I think is taking great leaps for IT. In fact, I had a thought about this the other day, and Patrick, I actually sincerely want your input on this. We get asked a lot of times about, can No Touch Center be configured in HADR configurations? And we can, because it's a front end in a database. But I was thinking about this the other day. Typically when you do that, it's because your endpoint management or your management servers are inside your infrastructure, and you got to be able to fail over from site A to site B. But I was thinking about this from a EUC endpoint management perspective. I would think it'd be more advantageous to be able to put your management plane into the cloud. That way, regardless of whether you're talking about a site A, site B, or site C, it doesn't matter. As long as you can get to the management plane and you can reconfigure your endpoints, you can reconfigure your endpoints to connect to any site and any platform or technology if you needed to change for whatever reason. So even if site A failed over to site B, if you're using a cloud management, in Azure or AWS, and you can connect to the management plane and reconfigure your devices on the fly, HA kind of becomes almost somewhat irrelevant at that point.
Yeah, well, and I mean that's the main thing that we've seen with the work from home spikes and initiatives is more people have to be connected to the internet. And so if your endpoint, your thin client is connected to the internet, then you don't care that the data center A just failed over to data center B in that situation, most likely, right? My thin client's still going to have its configuration. It can still ET phone home up to Azure, get its config, figure out that someone just changed the background, did this, did that, bada bing, bada boom, we're ready to go. So yeah, I think it's a really, really cool feature and kind of a big one out there, especially if anyone's already chugging the Azure Kool-Aid. This is just, sprinkles and extra sugar in your Kool-Aid. This is good stuff.
Well, and so about that, you obviously get exposed to all the environments, right? You get exposed to Citrix, you get exposed to VMware, you get exposed to WVD, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to tout one over the other just because you got to be somewhat neutral. But I mean, I'm certainly seeing more people kicking the tires on WVD, I guess, if you will.
Oh yeah, I mean it's every single person. If you're Microsoft rep, when you've done your renewal for Office 365 licenses or your server CALs or SA and all that, and they haven't said the word WVD, I mean I don't. I think those those salespeople will probably be fired. So it's a big deal. It's growing. It's got a lot of features at where it's at now and a lot more to come. So feature parity is definitely not where it is where Citrix has been around, for 30 years now and everything else. So it's catching up quickly though, and if it's quote bundled and kind of free depending on your license agreement, it's just going to keep going. And so yeah, no, and I think here's this next slide that Rich just went to. This is a big one for me as a security nerd, is that it has OTP password authentication. No other thin client manufacturer right now in this space has that. And that is really, really, really big to make sure that you are you when you're managing your endpoints, right? And that's a big deal. And there's a couple vendors that kind of come close with the email multi-factor authentication, but that's not multi-factor authentication when it comes to like kind of that standard of TOTP and OTP and the flexibility you gain from that, so that you can also make sure someone doesn't just have their compromised email. That means they've also compromised their phone and their passcode, and know which application you're using for your OTP, TOTP authentication. So really, really big stuff to help make your deployment that much more secure.
Well, and I tease everybody that I know. Anybody that's not using, I tout the authenticator apps just because it's so easy to set up. And yeah, you've got to be cognizant of when you set it up, that you have a recovery method. But I just don't get it. If you're not using something like an authenticator app to authenticate yourself against your apps, certainly when you're logging in from different locations or whatever, I think you're doing yourself a great disservice and putting yourself at risk. I mean, when we had the opportunity to add the MFA to No Touch Center, I was really pleased to see this, because more and more people are asking about it. So I think it's going to be a big deal. So
yep.
This is again one of those things that we're going to see more and more of, and this is one of those things that kind of stays under the cover when it comes to No Touch Center. Obviously, with it being a command line interface, but having the REST APIs available for No Touch Center is going to be, I think, a game changer for us as well. I mean, because we can often get asked about our ability to integrate with other consoles. When you're talking things like Workspace ONE from VMware, or being able to add monitoring features to things like Control Up, those kinds of things. Certainly we have the ability to interact and work with those tools and those applications today. But I think introduction of the REST APIs for No Touch Center is just going to take that to the next level, because now we'll be able to work with those vendors to create custom scripts, custom actions, events. So you'll be able to have a true seamless environment, whether it be from a like I said, a Workspace ONE, or from a Cloud Director, or whatever, to be able to reach out to No Touch Center, take actions, get metrics, etc. All from a command interface, and being able to script and use those APIs. I think it's going to be a game changer for us. So, and I know you do a lot of scripting. So,
Yeah, and I mean the way that I look at scripting nowadays is, when I hear the word scripting and APIs and REST API, I just hear the other word echo, flexibility. That's what I hear. Flexibility to do what you need to for multiple platforms, and have that interoperability to work with this solution and that solution, that a ServiceNow ticket can now be created that sets up the background on a thin client. Like there's lots of cool things where the dots can be connected, so that someone goes and puts on PTO, and they're going to be on PTO at home, that the background on their thin client now changes to stop working. You're on PTO. Have a great weekend. Like there's lots of real neat things that could be kind of like Tony Stark and Iron Man kind of stuff going on with automation when I hear API.
we need to have more of that. I'd like somebody to put up the, you're on vacation, go away. I don't think any of us really get away from that anymore, though. So.
I really think there's probably going to be an app in the next like 5 years that you're going to put on your phone that is going to be called like vacation mode. And you'll pick which applications you want to. And maybe I'm giving away like $1 million idea right now, but
I was going to say, Patrick, you're onto something. Yeah, automated response, PTO. I mean, yeah, we typically do that on our calendar anyways, but that doesn't prevent us from getting text messages and etc. What's this word vacation used? Jim Smith asked Patrick, what's this word vacation? Yeah, exactly. Anybody that's been in this space long enough, it's it's a balance of work and life, right? I mean, we do what we love and we love what we do, but at the same standpoint, there's always days where we go, I just need to step away and recharge.
Yep.
But anyways, the point being of having the flexibility with the APIs. And we talked about this as well. That I don't want to go over this too much, but this is to me this is a game changer. And right now we're working on doing the same thing for AWS, and hopefully I'll have that up and running soon. It's anybody that's ever deployed an application in Azure or AWS knows how painful the process of doing this is. If you, Patrick, I mean, I'm sure you've done security scans with these and audits with these types of companies. I mean, have you ever deployed applications?
No, and I don't think I want to though. Like that sounds terrifying. And it's, but to me, it's important to have Azure and AWS, which are kind of the big two out there, and having the flexibility that if you're already using either one of these big cloud platforms, that you can also just click a button in a marketplace and bam, you've got No Touch Center ready to go. So it's good stuff.
Well, and it's interesting, because you would think that all I got to do is get my virtual machine or my application uploaded to the appropriate marketplace, but it really doesn't work that way. There's more to it. I mean, you've got to get the application configured so that it generalizes the application anytime somebody new clicks on it and starts it up, right? Because obviously you don't want to have shared passwords or shared keys, et cetera, going across an application that you're deploying. And then you've got to go through all the business aspects of it and the security aspects of it, because the last thing, like in this case, Microsoft wants to do is have them or have a customer publish an application that goes out to a bunch of customers and then find out that there's a security breach in the application. So it's quite a complex process to do it. If anybody's never done it, I will tell you that from experience, it took us almost 3 months to get No Touch Center where it was, what we would consider deployable within the Azure Marketplace. So, but it is an adventure, and hopefully we'll have it on AWS soon as well. So, this next one, custom icons, it's this is one of those things that a lot of people think that it's somewhat silly, but it's not, right? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about end user computing, right? And the two key words there are end users, right? And so when you're putting Citrix icons or VMware icons or WVD icons out on the desktop, when they all look the same, and one is for accounting, one's for manufacturing, one's for HR, et cetera, it just looks clumsy when they all have the same icon. So, it took us a little bit to get here, but we decided to do it and do it right. So, having favicon support, so if you're connecting to a web app or a line of business application, you just point the browser to it and it picks up the icon from the URL, or being able to add custom icons, that way if you're using your own specific applications. So again, this is one of those things, it's about end user computing, right? We have to focus on what we're doing for the end users. So it's at the end of the day, it's all about the end users and providing them a great computing experience. So somebody just asked a question, Jim, with Azure and AWS roadmap for GCP, Oracle, IBM cloud options, I say we'll probably take them on. Probably GCP might be next. Again, it's one of those things, depends on demand and complexity and difficulty to do those. I would love to say we have the team and the staffing to go at all of them, but again, when they take let's say 3-month window to do those kinds of things, you have to focus and do the ones because you want to do them right. So, but I think to Patrick's point, Azure and AWS seem to be the most prominent from my perspective.
Right. And I mean, there's nothing going to stop you so far to be able to deploy it on any cloud, any SaaS provider, and make the VM and get it going from an OVA file up. So you'll do that. And so that way you can just kind of, it's not in the marketplace, but you can still make a VM and then load it from there, depending on which cloud provider. So getting it in the marketplace is just a little more fun than just uploading a JPEG or something.
Well, and having the REST API again, right? To your point, this is going to make it flexibility. Whereas if you're a service provider or you're a cloud hoster and you want to be able to do that, having the APIs, the ability to deploy it, within your own structure, you'll be able to use those REST APIs and do that, right? Because to your point, Patrick, with it being an OVA or a VHD, as long as you understand the structure of what's there, how you deploy it, having the tools to be able to deploy it and deploy it within your infrastructure, it should be relatively easy, regardless of the platform. It's just a matter of understanding what the rules are, right? So.
Yep, and it looks like we got a question down there. How do you secure Stratodesk in Azure? I think the one thing there is you've got the full Azure Security Center stack that you can configure and adapt and control what's allowed to come in and out, because this thing is quote internet facing, but the good thing in that sense is that it's already a hardened purpose-built virtual appliance, right? And so it's only communicating over those specific ports. And I know there's SSL certificates and other things and multi-factor that you turn on to help lower your risk even more beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's part of, I didn't go to the detail of it, but that is part of the configuration when you set it up. When we provide the application as part of Azure, we do get to specify, what interfaces are exposed, what ports are exposed on what interfaces, what the credentials are. And, again, the nice thing is with it being based off of our standard OVA, once you as a customer deploy it within Azure, you can then log in, connect to the security environment, and you can turn on the multi-factor authentication. You can set up the authenticator. You can set up the OTP. You can add or remove ports. Put in the password complexity that you want to put in, and then also again we didn't cover the role-based access slide that much, but with the increased and enhanced role-based access controls, the RBAC that we added into No Touch Center 4.5, you can actually you can have multiple users. I say users being administrators of the endpoints, so those people that can log into No Touch Center to configure those endpoints. You have the ability and the flexibility and control to say that, Rich is the No Touch Center administrator. Patrick is, he's going to be the group control administrator, where he's going to be able to control different groups and what devices are within groups, etc. But I may have, like Menser, who's going to be from the help desk, where Menser will only have the ability to shadow and, let's say, collect support files out of those machines, but he wouldn't have the ability to do anything else. And again, you got to remember, this is from a No Touch Center endpoint management. So there's no customer data here other than configuration information, right? And again, as Patrick mentioned, when you put in the SSL and when you put in the controls, there's no, I can't say there's no risk, but the risk of what's being exposed is extremely mitigated. So.
Yep, exactly. Yep,
There.
and Mincer just posted that stuff there too. And yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing when we think about any kind of thin client solution is these next couple slides, is that you want to have the most up-to-date client as possible. So we want the VMware to have the latest Horizon agent. We want Workspace app to have the latest version. And then on the WVD front, some of the optimization packs along with the latest RDP client as that updates too, so that you can make sure you have that kind of day zero support of new devices. And we know that these clients provide that functionality all the way down and will make or break the success of your deployment too, right? So it's really important to keep those things up to date. And there's lots of security fixes that have been happening in each one of these over the past couple months too. So you want to patch them from that way. And some thin client vendors, it's days, weeks, months before they get that latest client installed on there.
Yeah, we've actually had companies or customers come to us from our competitors that say, hey, we've got to go with Stratodesk just because, we've got to have the latest version of the Workspace app, or we've got to have the latest version of Horizon client, simply because, we've got to get the latest features and we're upgrading or we're migrating, those kinds of things. And they say to us, well, our current vendor has told us that either A, our existing hardware won't support it because there's not enough space, and or B, they're just not going to integrate that client into that build. So it's, they kind of end up getting stuck, right? Because now they've just invested all this money into vendor A, let's say 3 years ago, 4 years ago, to get their thin clients, thinking that they were going to get the latest and greatest. Now they've got this hardware and this vendor's OS, and now this vendor's telling them, well, we're not going to update that OS, but now they're still stuck with that hardware. And that's the advantage of being hardware agnostic, is the fact that Stratodesk OS, we can put it on virtually any vendor's endpoint, whether it be a thin client or PC. So it's definitely a good thing for us. So um, and we're a little bit over, and I don't mind. I mean, we can go for a couple more minutes. So Windows Virtual Desktop, we recently added the ADFS support. So that's one of those things that, Patrick, as you mentioned, being able to get the latest client and features of those clients, it's important for us to be able to get those things down there. So continuing to update, and as the slide says, we're always up to date. So it's one of those things that we're pretty proud of, making sure we get the latest stuff in there. Citrix Workspace app, as Patrick mentioned, again, here we are, we're now just barely into June, and we've already got the April version of the Workspace app. And actually, I think Citrix is about ready to come up with another one. So we should.
They will be. Yep.
Yep, and we continue to have those updates as readily available. Do you know, Patrick, as far as the Citrix thing, I know Citrix has got some stuff going on regarding security. Is there anything that you can share on that, or is still information not?
No. I mean, they had a vulnerability, I guess, basically before this version, where if you were on the system and the system was deployed using the administrator account, which is most everybody will be that, that way it can cause a privilege escalation to do things. So there's been a big run for the past little bit to get everybody updated to this and the latest LTSR version if you're one of those types of clients too. So pretty much everybody in the EUC space, their client becomes part of a target of CVEs and vulnerabilities once or twice a year, and it's only going to grow just because the solutions are growing and more people are using them. So it's going to become a bigger target. So staying up to date is the key to success. You can't wait 1 month after something's been released and then start rolling it out, especially if it has any security bugs or vulnerabilities, because by then 1 month is 1 month too late.
Well, certainly if you ask any of the ransomware exposed people in, right? There's been a couple of questions here. So one is, can you install Stratodesk on old Chromebooks? Well, certainly old Chromebooks is a relative term. And I would tell you, we have had people that have had success with Chromebooks. Certainly, you got to be careful of, is it the, I forget what it is, the Rockland chipsets, or what it is, the ARM-based chipsets, but certainly on the Intel-based chipsets, more people have had success doing that. So I would say, it's one of those things, if you've got a stack of old Chromebooks laying around that you're looking to reprovision to Stratodesk, certainly it's not going to hurt you to give one a shot, because again, we've had multiple people that have had different success. And with the Chromebooks, it's important to understand that, there are, multiple different vendors out there that produce Chromebooks, but in reality, all of the Chromebooks are pretty much the same. There's really only 4 different variants per se, meaning the ODMs that actually make the Chromebooks, they'll say, okay, we have this type of glass, whether it be glossy or matte. We have this chipset, whether it be the ARM chipset or the Intel chipset. And then we have, an 8 gig version and an 8 gig flash version, and these kinds of things. And so the vendors themselves, the actual, let's say the Dells, the HPs, et cetera, that actually then sell the thin clients or the Chromebooks, actually only get to choose from those pool of options. So even though they may look somewhat different, most of the Chromebooks are actually pretty much all the same. So, and then there was a question about optimizations for Raspberry Pi devices with Citrix for Teams. That's a 2-phase or 3-phase thing, right? In other words, obviously there's some dependency on Microsoft for that, for the Raspberry Pis. And then certainly Citrix has to be able to do that as well. And certainly there's been a lot of changes within Teams over the last, 14, 16 months, simply because of trying to get everything updated and with all the rush to collaboration. So I would tell you, there's nothing that I can commit to, but I would say certainly always check back and check back frequently, because there are changes continually. And the EUC or the VDI vendors are aware that Raspberry Pi is growing in popularity still. So there's continued development on that. Then let's see, with all the worldwide supply chain challenges, which OEMs do you think will actually have physical inventory of thin clients preloaded with Stratodesk OS?
That
So,
seems like a tough one, just because
well,
I don't think there's a lot of vendors that have supply of really anything, let alone a thin client.
well,
Config.
it's interesting, and you're talking about getting other OEMs to preload our software, right? Now, I will say, anybody that pays attention to Stratodesk is probably aware that we've been growing pretty dramatically, and in the last couple of months we've added Jim Thames as VP of Strategic Alliances to go after those kinds of things, and Steve Thompson as far as our VP of our partner network. So, but I will tell you, likewise in EMEA, you can actually purchase HP thin clients with Stratodesk already on them. Dell actually has the ability to sell Stratodesk OS, so there's no reason they couldn't. And there's a couple others that certainly ClearCube is out there that has Stratodesk. Certainly N-Computing has Stratodesk on them. LG has Stratodesk on them. And I will tell you that we currently are in discussions with a couple of others. So keep tuned. Those will be coming as well. So. And then any chance to integrate VMware tools for the best customer demo or lab purposes?
I think, I mean, it would definitely not installing VM tools on there because it's not a VM, but it makes me think that that's maybe like the Horizon agent stuff and like the latest version. So I'm thinking that's what that comes in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I don't, to your point, most of the VMware tools are more related to the VMs themselves, and obviously we're just using the client, not the VM. But I will tell you that as a partner with VMware, and likewise with Citrix, we are part of their partner network, and as part of that, we have qualifications and certifications that we have to do to make sure that we're always up to date and always including the latest, greatest components of things that they come up with, which, by the way, is part of the reason why we always have so many updates. So it's one of those things at Stratodesk, I tell people all the time, it's really important to read the release notes that come out, when we release updates, because those release notes will tell you A, what's been added, B, what's been improved, C, what's been fixed. And you may find that there may be 3, 4, 5 releases of Stratodesk No Touch OS that are not relevant to you. Relevant meaning that there hasn't been any changes from what you're running in production today. Like if you're a VM shop and you're running Horizon 7.x and you've got to have Horizon Client 3.x to go with that environment, we may have done 5, 6, 7 updates to No Touch OS that have absolutely no bearing in your infrastructure or your environment. So it's really important to read those release notes and pay attention to those things. And along the lines of the tool thing, if VMware comes out with a Horizon client component that is
Yeah.
specific, then we'll probably put that in there.
So Nick is talking about if you could make a No Touch OS VM so that you could show off No Touch OS without, using a physical endpoint, like put it in VMware. Okay,
Actually,
that makes sense.
so thanks for the clarification on that, Nicholas. And actually, you can deploy No Touch OS on Fusion. The key thing there is you've got to make sure that you select the legacy IDE drive type, because by default it tries to deploy it on iSCSI or SCSI drives, and it won't do that. And that's probably where the tools thing may come in. But yes, you can deploy No Touch OS as a VM. You just got to be careful of the drive type that you select when you create the VM.
Sweet.
So thanks for that clarification. I hope that helps. Let's see. And Patrick, I don't know. I was told that this is actually going to go an hour, so we can keep on going as long as you got the time.
Yeah.
Because this is another one. Frame, right? Obviously, Frame had been around for quite a few years. And I want to, I don't want to be negative about Frame, but I'm going to say that they went kind of stagnant for a little bit with the acquisition, right, when they got acquired by Nutanix. And so there's been a little bit of a lag in development in their Linux client for Frame. But they've picked up over the last couple of months, and they've been pushing on that, and they've actually been doing a couple updates. And we're actually, I think I want to say, I may be mistaken, but I'm going to say I think we're the first thin OS to actually be certified for the Linux Frame client. Hopefully.
Yeah, you'd be really, really close. It'd probably just be within days or weeks if it was anything else.
So only 4.13 kernel would not work on kernel 5.x, even with IDE. Well, Nicholas, do us a favor, if you wouldn't mind. See, again, we're open and transparent about this and free-flowing in these conversations. Nicholas, I would say, if you can, see if you can get a support file out of that and open a support case. Because if our guys are aware of it, we can certainly take a look at it. So appreciate the feedback, and please go ahead and open a support ticket. And if you can get a support file out of that, go ahead and submit it. Okay? So thank you. Appreciate that feedback. Let's see where we're at next here. Control up. And I'm sure you got some feedback on this as well, Patrick. But I mean, obviously Control Up is one of those things that it's a great tool. It's been out there for quite a long time. It's evolved tremendously. And the Control Up, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. I think it's the Avasi. I know John Rolls was part of this, the agent. But basically, what this new agent from Control Up for Linux does is it gives them the ability, using a Control Up tenant with this agent running in No Touch OS, they can actually monitor the Wi-Fi configuration and stability for those work from home devices. So when you've got somebody that's working from home and they say, hey, my hillbilly internet, sorry to pick on you, Patrick.
It happens.
My hillbilly internet goes down at 11:30 in the morning, and it turns out that's when the kids are done with school. So but it's going to give Control Up the ability to have those insights. So
yeah, and spot those, because with this work from home craziness, we've seen a whole lot of people that have in their home, and maybe somebody on here has experienced, they've never had to like actually depend on their wireless network or just their internet in general. And so then you got a couple kids on their Zoom meetings doing school, a couple people watching some TikToks, some Tiger King, and a little bit of Fortnite or Apex Legends, and then bada bing, I can't join the Zoom meeting. My audio is cracking. This is going on. My Citrix session, my VMware session, my WVD session, the mouse is not moving the way it should be. The graphics aren't as snappy on my Xi session with Nutanix. So it's like, oh, well, that's because you're on 802.11b. Oh, yeah. I mean, I haven't bought a new Wi-Fi thingy that's just been stuffed in a corner of my house since they built the house. And so you've got 5, 10, 15-year-old network equipment now trying to do work from home. And those people complaining and wondering what's going on. And then when you don't have visibility into their home network, with Control Up, you can see a little bit of details of that home network to be able to go, you probably need to head to the Best Buy or to the Amazons on the internets and get you something new, because that's why. And or your signal is so weak. Where are you? Where is your access point? So
well,
it's,
you mean my home office doesn't work down inside my my brick block home in the basement?
yeah, your dungeon basement. No, it doesn't. The
Well,
Wi-Fi's can't go through all the things. It's just like X-rays through lead, right? It can only go so far.
well, or I've got my access point sitting up in my attic, tied up with all my AC ductwork, right, and all
Yep.
that oil running around, and I've got just some personal feedback on this. I will tell you, I've been using one of the largest cable providers in the U.S. I'm not going to give them too much credit. For 15 years, and I've been fortunate that I've only had probably 5 outages in that time period. But I will tell you, they periodically send me spam emails, and I typically, like probably all of us, just ignore those emails. And about 2.5 months ago, I got an email, and I actually paid attention to it. I was surprised. I opened it up, and they said, congratulations, we've just updated your speed, but in order to be able to take advantage of that speed, we noticed even though you have a DOCSIS 3.0 route or cable modem, your DOCSIS 3.0 cable modem is not capable of supporting all the new channels that we provide. So in order to take advantage of this, you've got to get a new modem. I was like, aha. So I would just say, pay attention to those things periodically. If you haven't, definitely take a look at that kind of stuff. So Jim Smith, have you looked at the latest insights from ControlUp and its diag with the Wi-Fi topic? Yeah, and I haven't looked dramatically into the console, because obviously we work with these different vendors when it comes to applications like ControlUp, CrowdStrike, etc., right? So when the team from ControlUp contacted us and said, hey, we're going to have a new agent that does this, they provide us the integration guidance, if you will. It took us 2 days to get the new agent running in No Touch OS. Again, that's the flexibility of us. And so then I communicated with the team at ControlUp and said, hey, let's make sure this is working. They sent me back a screenshot, said, yep, it's doing everything we need it to do. Congratulations, you're a go. So I haven't looked at the console itself, but I've heard it provides good data. So, but yeah, if you got an end user computing environment, regardless of your thin clients, regardless of your endpoints, if you want good insights of what's going on, I'm going to give ControlUp a pat on the back, but likewise, I don't ignore, we also deal with, liquidwares and those kinds of things. So I can't exclude our other partners as well. So anyway, so I think we're about at the end here. Yep. So this is the point where I know we've been answering questions along the way, but certainly, anybody that's out there, if you got more questions, go ahead and throw them in. We often get asked, what is the largest deployment? Though this one is not our largest, as I thought about it afterwards, but it is one of our largest. We have, we have a couple that are, multiples of tens of thousands of devices, and they are a combination. Some of them are BPOs or business process outsourcing companies. Some of them are service providers. Some of them are companies themselves, and they have a combination, thanks to COVID, of both on-prem and remote users. Certainly, No Touch Center has the ability to scale with all of those. Patrick, the real question is Capitol Bill watching over you. Not sure. I think you probably know what that one means, Patrick. I'll let you jump into that one just a second. So anyway, so let me run this and I'll let you answer that. So how often do we need to do updates? We do updates regularly. Like I said, because of all the different integrations, whether it be ControlUp, whether it be VMware, whether it be Citrix, we're always getting updates. So we always provide those updates to our customer portal. So it's one of those things. Log in, like I said. Pay attention to the release notes, see if it's something that applies to you. If it does, download it, figure out your deployment schedule, use the tools that are there to moderate the deployment, and then go ahead and push it out. So is that Capitol Bill something you wanted to address, Patrick, or just?
Yeah, so I went to Capitol Hill and I made a life-size Mr. Bill from Schoolhouse Rock, and so he is sitting behind me. I think my webcam, it's turning on, but it doesn't look like it's like working the right way. And goes back to my hillbilly internet, because I do live out in the middle of nowhere, so it is my own fault. But yeah, Mr. Bill's just hanging out.
That's obviously something inside.
There he is. So. Oh, there, it showed for a second. There he is. He's hanging out up there.
Let's see. Is it possible to plan an LFI update to a specific time and date? Yeah, absolutely. So Nicholas, if you haven't, pull down the latest versions of No Touch Center. Inside of No Touch Center, you will see that there are multiple ways to control the throttling of pushing out the LFIs. In fact, you can control the number of concurrent updates. You can control the number of concurrent updates per group. You can, well, actually, each one of these settings, I'm going to mention, you can control per group. So you can control the number of concurrent threads, right? Update 5 devices, update 15 devices, 500, whatever, so you don't flood your network. You can also specify windows of operation or windows of deployment, if you will. So you can say Mondays between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., Tuesdays between 4 a.m. to 5 a.m., those kinds of things. So certainly you have that those flexibility. You can also say don't start before, and in that field that says do not start before, you can click on it and it pops open the calendar, so you can say, hey, I want this to go, but I don't want it to go until June 15th, if you will, in this case. As well as you can even go as far as specify, and I want to make sure that the endpoint has been idle for 10 minutes to make sure that the user's not there. Let's say that, as we talked earlier, right, the mix of business and pleasure hours, maybe somebody for whatever reason decided that they wanted to work at 11 p.m. tonight. If they're working, you don't want to do those updates. So
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people have learned, and I've seen, is that people have a hard time like trying to figure out when to update things now, because everyone's working on their own schedule. And I know for me, sometimes I wake up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, will work for a little while, and if someone sent a reboot and thinking like, who's up at 2 o'clock in the morning working, this guy. It's like, oh, sorry about that. So normal maintenance windows and how you do endpoint maintenance has kind of changed so much. And that's where if all your users are just connecting from a Windows or Mac to a virtual desktop to do all their business, this is where having a simpler endpoint and a more stable and remotely manageable and viewable and auditable is where Stratodesk can really shine for you, for sure.
So, and I will tell, again, this is the advantage of, the combination of No Touch OS and No Touch Center. It's one of those things that, believe it or not, we can actually, and I've done this, you can create a custom command and create a custom icon to put on the desktop. So let's say it, I live in Central Time US. So let's say it's Central Time 6 p.m. US today. I wanted to be able to provide the ability to update the endpoints, but I wanted to have the end users have that choice. So I could actually, before I leave today at the end of the day, I could go create a new custom icon, put it on the desktop of my end users, and that custom icon would run a quote unquote custom command. And that custom command and that icon would say update now. So suddenly at 6 p.m., all of my users that are out there would suddenly see an icon that shows up on their desktop that says update now. And really what that icon does is it changes a parameter inside of No Touch OS, forces the device to reboot. The device will reboot based on that custom parameter. It would automatically assign that device to a new group. That new group has the parameter saying, get a new version of the LFI file. It would pull down that new version of the LFI file, automatically reassign back into that same group, but have another new parameter, and based on that new parameter, move it back to the original group and reconfigure the user for their line of business work. So I can literally put an icon on the desktop and allow the users to do their updates on their own without them knowing what's really going on, other than it says, click here to update. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. So is there any chance of that? So Nicholas, if you will, go ahead and send me an email, rich.severson, S-E-V as in Victor, E-R-S-O-N at stratodesk.com. And yeah, I can get to that custom parameter how to do that. So, all right. So it's relatively easy. Anyways, we're pushing against the hour. So I'm going to say, if anybody has any questions, please throw them out there. Patrick, as always, I'm going to leave the last word to you, and thank you again. And please, if share anything you got to share with us.
Yeah, no, I know I've got a blog coming on how to set up all the stuff step by step in Azure. So I've got to just formulate my screenshots and then probably have to decide if I'm going to drive to the Dunkin' Donuts, the McDonald's, or the Pilot gas station to upload it, because that Word document already with the screenshots as it is like 50 megabytes, and 50 megabytes on Hillbilly Internet will basically mean about 2 hours of no one using the internet while it uploads. So I have to go phone a friend to upload things. So but yeah, I think the most important thing is just thinking about your endpoints. And if you haven't kicked the tires on Stratodesk, definitely recommend it. Looking at kind of the security and also the stability differences that you can provide your users. It's really, really cool stuff. And we're still in some crazy times, and having the flexibility to kind of run on basically any endpoint that has a power cord is very, very, very good stuff.
So, all right. Well, let's see. Guess you need to swing by the Triangle area. Well,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, talking
we,
about that Google Fiber, that gigabit stuff.
yeah, well, Jim, we'd all like to get the Google Fiber. They've been talking about it. Patrick and I both live in the Nashville metro area, so it'd be nice if we get it. But again, I've had pretty good luck with mine, so I'm not going to complain. And Patrick, if you ever want to come over to this side of the town, I know it's a little bit farther for you, but you can always borrow some of my bandwidth if you need it. So,
Yep.
um,
Thank you.
any other additional questions, guys? If not, thank you all for coming by. Patrick, again, as always, thank you very much. Look forward to the next one, and have a great day, guys. Appreciate it.